Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Wendy, Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year, Mike. How are you feeling about 2018 so far?
I'm feeling strong about 2018.
Yeah?
I am. I'm super excited about it, and I think we're going to have our best year yet.
I'm very excited, but I always am at the New Year. I love the fresh start, and I got to say, the first day of the month, the first day of the year, and they both land on a Monday. That's an OCD dream come true.
Right.
For me.
Right, there you go. The calendars are very easy for everybody.
I was really excited about that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to big things this year.
I'm excited about the synergy of everything happening today with this particular episode. So for the first episode of the year, we're once again talking about the Chicago Mothman.
And we have covered this topic more than almost any other topic within, the year. So it's nice to have a little bit of, I don't want to say closure, but, we're really getting some answers, I think.
Absolutely. So this is this is our closing chapter on the Chicago Mothman for a while, at least until something new and interesting happens. Maybe a new break in the case.
Yeah. And I got to confess, I'm over it. I'm over the Chicago Mothman. After visiting Point Pleasant and, really diving into the actual, the Point Pleasant Mothman, this Chicago one, it's a lot ado.
Well, here's the thing, and that's why we get into it today. We're talking about the different, the sightings, the research into it, and it's our paranormal New Year's resolution for higher standards of research.
Yes.
In 2018, and so we talk about that in the episode. But also the synergy is that we are going to be in Chicago on Friday, January 5th. Number one, we're going to be playing an Uncommon Ground. The Edgewater location, West Devon Avenue, Chicago, Illinois.
8 p.m. Central Time, of course.
8 p.m. we will be hosting a live Mothman sighting. Mothman said he's going to be at the Sunspot show at the Uncommon Ground in Devon, West Devon Avenue.
He might be on the rooftop farm, getting a snack up there.
It is the home of the first certified organic rooftop farm in the U.S. So Mothman's flying in. He's going to grab some beets and vegetables, and he's going to fly away. But he's going to come to the show. We're having a live Mothman sighting, Uncommon Ground Sunspot acoustic show this Friday night, 8 p.m.
That's right.
At the Edgewater.
And then we're going to go straight from there to the heart of Chicago, downtown, where we're going to be at the WGN.
The Tribune Tower.
Yes. And we're going to be live on the air with Patty Vasquez, who has a great show evenings, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., you night owls like me.
That's right. If you are a were owl, like the Chicago Mothman, then you might be interested in hanging out with us late night on WGN.
Yes, and Patty is great. She's hilarious. She's a comedian, and if you haven't seen or heard her, you'll definitely enjoy the show. And we're going to play a few songs, too.
That's right. So we're going to play music at the Uncommon Ground Coffee House. They got Green Star Brewing there, so they got local beer also at the Uncommon Grounds. We can't forget.
Yeah.
So we're going to be drinking beer, hanging out with the Mothman, and going to WGN.
And if you're not in Chicago, you can still listen to the WGN interview because that'll be streaming at WGNradio.com.
That's right. And it's available. I mean, you can get WGN as far north as north of Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
You can get it into Michigan. You can get it into Indiana. Like it's like the biggest AM radio station.
What's the station?
720 AM.
Okay. So tune your dials to 720 AM, Midwesterners.
And I'm excited because I have not been in the WGN studios since my mother won a trip to the Academy Awards there in a live game show in 1981.
Very exciting. We'll have to see how it's changed since then, Mike.
You have to see how it's changed. And before we go into the thing, I just tell one story about that. So they're doing the question, and one of the questions, getting near the end of the quiz show part of it. Okay, and so we're all in the studio except we're behind the glass, and my mom and the host and her opponent are all, in the studio. She got the headphones on and the microphone. And like the second or third to last question is, the host goes, "What is this sound?" And it goes,
awesome.
And my sister and I are freaking out. We're practically banging on the glass, and we're thinking, Darth Vader, Darth Vader, Darth Vader. And the other lady's like, I don't know, is it some kind of disco dance? She straight up said that, which is the most 1981 thing to say possibly. Some kind of disco dance. Gosh. And that was wrong. And then my mother's like, oh, is it from Close Encounters of the Third Kind? So at least she was in the ballpark, but obviously they both got it wrong.
And the tiebreaker?
I don't remember.
Oh, Mike, you're killing us.
All I remember is the Darth Vader
win, though?
breathing. She did win. My mother did win. And then they got to go to the Academy Awards. They sat in front of Lloyd Bridges, Jeff Bridges, and Bo Bridges' dad. And
so
they got to stay at the Bonaventure Hotel, which is such a beautiful... If you've ever seen the show It's a Living, it's the hotel they show on the outside. Anyway,
fantastic.
Neither here nor there. Well, we don't have to talk about Los Angeles in the 1980s. We will be talking about Chicago and the Mothman in this episode. It's awesome. We have really stellar guests from the director of Illinois' Mutual UFO Network, Tobias Whalen from Singular 40, and he's been following this for months. Madeline Kate from Measuring the Circle, another Chicagoan. And then, of course, my sister, Allison Jornlin, who owns the YouTube channel Mothman and has been going to almost every single location or every reported location of Mothman sightings, even in the cold and stuff. And so you're going to hear a lot more about it right now. Let's go to the panel. The dark-winged humanoid Mothman is back with 60-some sightings dating back to 2011, most of them occurring this year in Chicagoland, beginning in February 2017, and the last sighting being reported recently as December 7th, a day that will truly live in infamy. We originally reported on the recent flap in episode 159 in the late summer. But now the Chicago Mothman sightings are becoming more and more controversial by the day. We just had Lauren Coleman on talking about it a few weeks ago. There's been books released, and it just was the 50th anniversary of the original Mothman, the OM, in West Virginia, just coming up in December, the collapse of the bridge. So today, we're going to get an update on the situation. We're going to be talking about it. Allison, my sister, is here from MilwaukeeGhost.com. Tobias Whalen of the Singular 40 and blog. Madeline Kate from the Measuring the Circle video podcast, and Sam Maranto, the Illinois director for the Mutual UFO Network. Welcome, Illinoisans. We will try not to hold that against you. And thank you for coming together to shed some light on the current Chicago Mothman controversy. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in order. We'll start Tobias, then Madeline, and then Sam. And Allison, I'm going to start out with you because you just got featured on Mysterious Universe yesterday, made me jealous. And then I saw it on the Coast to Coast AM RSS feed. And it said like, Mothman investigator with questions. And I'm like, oh, this might be an interesting article. And then I'm like, holy crap, that's my sister. Okay, so you've been getting yourself into trouble just like you did back in high school, except today, instead of cutting class and drinking with your friend Bill, you're getting in other kinds of trouble. So what have you been up to, Alan?
Okay, well, I didn't mean to get in trouble. Really, I didn't. But I asked questions, and some of those questions weren't popular. So certainly what I did is I just thought there's nothing like boots on the ground to really get in there and see if you can separate some fact from fiction. So when all these Mothman occurrences came to light, I was like, hey, that's in Chicagoland. That's not too far. I mean, if I'm a 40 investigator, I should be there. This seems major. So that's what I intended to do. Just go to all the sites and then document the sighting locations for YouTube and see what I could learn by being on scene and following in the footsteps of the witnesses. And originally, when we did our podcast in late summer, I put that together with Lon from the Phantom and Monsters blog, and Lon Strickler, and also Manuel Navarrete of the UFO Clearinghouse, and we also have Tobias Whalen on again from Singular 40. And so, I really wanted to find a monster. That's what I'm in this for.
That's the whole point. I wanted to find a winged humanoid.
Right.
Like, who does not want to see that?
I'm not in this to really cause trouble. But so what I unfortunately found, though, as I was going to the locations, is many of the reports did not seem plausible, either because the locations are just crazy busy. At all times of night, you're being trampled by people. And my question there is, Why haven't more people
Right.
seen it and reported it? Why isn't there more general knowledge? Then also, when I started getting into the nitty gritty of some of the locations, some of the things that were said in the accounts didn't quite match up. Like one, the Miller Park sighting. When I finally found
that's Miller Park in Chicago. That's
yeah,
not Miller
Park in Chicago. Yeah, it's not Miller Park in Milwaukee. Yeah, Miller Park in Chicago is a tiny little speck between two buildings. It's a little kiddie park for toddlers, really. And so I finally found it after driving around and around. And that account, which is from 2011, talked about the witness living in a fifth-story building when she saw the Mothman from her window. And there were no fifth-story buildings. And believe me, trying to find that in Miller Park, I was everywhere. And I'm like, where are these 5-story buildings? They got up to 3-story, and then that was it. And then also in Miller Park, her boyfriend also allegedly saw the creature standing on top of a basketball hoop. And there is no basketball hoop there. It's a kiddie park. It's for toddlers. It's all slides and swings, and they're really, that plastic kind for younger children. And there really isn't room either for like a whole basketball court. So I find it implausible that there ever was a basketball hoop there because of the size.
Also, the thing is, if you were playing against a team of winged humanoids basketball, that is the most unfair thing, because like Jordan could dunk, right? Like his vertical was crazy. But imagine the vertical if you got freaking wings.
Yeah. And then there were other things too that came out. For one of the sightings, there was supposed to be a police report, and no one in the Chicago Phantom Task Force, which is just a Facebook Messenger group, could help me when I asked. I'm like, hey, well, that should be public information. Well, who asked for it? Where can I find more information? And I asked repeatedly, and everybody just ignored that. So I had to go through my own sources to find there is no such police report.
And your own your own sources. I mean, we talked to a private investigator.
Yeah,
like to find
a private investigator,
a police report. We talked to Magnum PI himself.
Well, no, but
he wasn't. But he
knows.
Didn't have a mustache, but he's got a beard, long hair.
Yeah, he does know people in the CPD, so that's where we were able to get the information. But sadly, when I tracked down the details, things started to unravel, and I wasn't quiet about it. And subsequently, I've run afoul of Lon Strickler of the Phantom Monsters blog and of Manuel Navarrete, and they've said some rather inflammatory things about me and untrue things. So I'm not going to go into the detail, but suffice it to say that that in some posts, they say that I got some type of sensitive information from my access to this Facebook Messenger group, and I released it without permission. And then other times, they say I was never privy to such information. So which is it? So I think that's I could go into all the details, but I just want to state that as a detail, that if anybody's wondering, who is telling the truth here, look at if things go back and forth. I think, if you see that someone is accusing you of something and then they reverse and they go back and accuse you of something else, I think that becomes clear that who is playing dirty pool here. But anyway, just I think this whole thing has made me think about the paranormal research in a different way and hope for something better, hope for a higher standard. And so I hope that's what we can talk about today, problems we encountered, but ways we can go about being better in the new year, our New Year's resolution for paranormal investigation.
Well, I think what's important to talk about today is that, number one, yes, how can we do better research? How can we make things more believable? How can we convince the straights that what we're saying, has some kind of import to it? And another thing is, this was the biggest Midwest paranormal story of the entire year. there was this idea that we're being attacked by like the Hawkmen from Flash Gordon are coming on. They're coming to Chicago. And so what's going on? So, all right. Now, Tobias, how'd you get involved with the Mothman? Like you did say earlier that you were a Chicago sports fan, but you live in Madison. How did you get pulled into this mad flapping of wings?
Well, I had seen the initial reports in mid-April, and I started covering it for our website in early May. And from there, as reports continued to come out, I continued to write articles about them, just to generally inform our readers. And I started to see that the reports, they were coming into MUFON. Traditionally, my experience with MUFON is that they're not going to share a whole lot of information. So I contacted the other sources. I interviewed Lon Strickler in, I believe, June of that year, and then I interviewed Manuel Navarrete in July of 2017. And one thing I would like to mention, just to say, in that July interview, I did ask him specifically if anyone had requested the police report from that Auburn Gresham sighting, and he did say that he had attempted to request one using FOIA, and was told that no such police report existed. So, it had seemed, to be common knowledge, certainly by the time, anybody started arguing over anything, that police report just didn't exist. And everybody knew that it didn't exist. And, we were sort of going back and forth as to why. Certainly when things like that happen, there are a lot of people that love to immediately jump to the conspiratorial sort of theories. I am not one of those people, but no, to my knowledge, it was pretty commonly understood that police report just did not exist as far as anybody knew. In any case, since then I've been doing my best to keep up with the story, try to cover it from every available angle as far as that goes. Leading up to today, things have certainly quieted down quite a bit since October, but what with the new book releases by Lauren Coleman and Lon Strickler, there certainly still seems to be plenty to talk about.
There certainly does. And the thing about things have slowed down in October because Mothman don't do cold. Yeah. And so he's already flown, he or she has already flown south for the winter.
Did you just assume the gender?
That's right. That's right. You can't assume the gender.
You have something to add.
That was me stepping right into my privilege. So, Madeline, how'd you get involved?
I started looking into the sightings about the same time as you, Tobias. They were all over Facebook and social media late April. And so I live not too far from Chicago. I live in the northwest suburbs. So I knew it was basically in my backyard. I had to go check it out. So in May and also in June, I went twice. I went to the Oz Park and Lincoln Park sightings and just wanted to also get some boots on the ground and kind of see what I could see and see if the reports matched the location. And I also went to Navy Pier and did some investigation there. Right away, I had some problems because I noticed that all of the reports were basically funneling in through one source blog. So that raised a lot of questions for me. I do have a video podcast, and I was able to interview Lon last month, and I asked him some questions, that are going to be brought up in this podcast here. And one in particular thing that he said to me that I thought was very interesting was that he said that Mothman is going to be taking a break this winter. Mothman, I guess, doesn't like the cold. I don't know. If I had wings, if I had 15-foot wings, I would be flying to Florida as well. So I thought that was strange, and I asked him, what his reasoning was for saying a statement like that, and he said that in the wintertime, there's not going to be as many people outside, so there won't be as many sightings. And I disagree with that statement. Obviously, tourism is going to slow down in the city. People aren't out as much, but the city is still going to have people walking to work, commuting every day, and there's still many opportunities if there is a creature for it to be sighted there. So, yeah, I've kind of had a lot of problems along the way.
Sure. Well, I understand that. Now, Sam, we were talking about, Tobias mentioned his experiences with MUFON before, and you are the director of the Illinois Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah.
And so when did you guys start receiving reports of the Mothman?
Here's the first report. And this is, again, it's incorrect in the book. I'm going through, it's labor intensive, the errors in the book as far as documentation, the facts. October 13th of 2011 is when the first report came in, and that's report number, got to take off my glasses, 32567. That one came in at 8:51. We have the IP address and everything, and the gentleman did not want to be anonymous. It's a photograph. It isn't a witness report. It's what the person seen in the photograph he took on August 22nd of 2011, 50-some days earlier. That came in October the 13th, the same day, strangely enough, as the Miller Park report came in, which came in later in the day. I have all the documentation from the web, everything independently. That came in later in the afternoon, and it was posted to UFO Clearinghouse and also Lawn Site, which is Phantoms and Monsters. This was the first report.
Real quick, Sam, when you say things, reports come in, like, set that up for me. Like, how does a report happen? Like, so somebody's like, holy crap, I just saw a winged humanoid.
These
what
are a lot of,
what do you do next?
They go online, they put it in, and the bottom line, somebody is assigned to handle CMS reports. They're volunteers to handle it. These come in, they come funneled in as, Tobias understands how this goes. It comes in, and people working the CMS are handling them, and they fill it out. They look to see where it's going to go, what state, to see if it should be, if it's just nasty narrations in there, a lot of swearing, then they'll tear it apart if it has to be. But then it goes to the state director. Then the state director has to review it. I reviewed it, and it sure looked like a bat to me or some sort of something. And the guy's narrative is just stating that, hey, I went there to take a picture of the statue with the thumb sticking out that looks like a sazich of the guy standing there, the Native American, and this whole thing is really just I think that was apropos because it's a matter of perspective. And from that perspective, and I have the original photo, which has all the metadata, the FX, the data in there that we need. We pulled it. It's legit. It wasn't manipulated. And we know the exact GPS spot that person took that picture, looking northeast at 2:10 in some seconds in the afternoon. We know the weather data at that time, not an average weather data throughout the course of the day, which according to Lon was 4 point something and therefore could not support a kite. Well, we know at that point it was 5.8, and the type of kite that we know because the manufacturer actually verified it and gave us the model. Not me, they did. A mother knows its baby. And they had one of the old-time technicians that knows these products inside out. It was an old kite. It's an old kite. It's a battered-up kite, but it's a kite nonetheless. You'll be seeing tons of information on that, and we have that information. The bottom line, that's what it was and nothing more. Well, it took on a myth of its own, a life of its own. The minute that Miller Park report came in, and Miller Park report, the important thing is, as Ellison mentioned, and I looked, and I know the area, I've seen it, I've been there. The bottom line, there are no 5-story buildings in that vicinity. That was the first thing. It was a giveaway. Plus the narrative. We've had the narratives analyzed by professional or experts in this type of analysis. And this is also very interesting. The other thing is the conflicting data when you have stuff like the moon, for instance. Madeline remembers this. The moon, a nearly a nearly full moon when it was just a little sliver. It was a waxing moon, and it wasn't even visible at that point. And it was raining out at that time, and we don't even hear anything about that. And there's a lot of conflicting data that just is historically and emphatically wrong. And yet, nobody questions that.
So how many reports have you gotten, Sam?
Okay, now that's 2011. And of course, we end up with the gentleman looking at this winged being looking like a sugar glider, right? The guy from Tasmania. What's Tasmania? Australia. What's the other name for Australia? Oz. Fantasy and illusion. Okay? It's becoming self-explanatory. Now the next thing is, in 2000, all of a sudden, we get a report on the, what was it? The 18th, we get a report. In fact, we had 3 within a relatively short period of time. And the people are looking at the dates of the supposed event taking place instead of the date when we actually received the information and when it was posted, where we know for a fact it took place, where we got the information. And this is the problem. They're not looking at that information. It came in on the 18th and supposedly happened when? On the 16th. What is that? That is Easter Sunday, the resurrection. Well, what happened on the 10th? The 10th, we have a sighting in Oz Park. Oz returns. Here we have Oz Park. We have this sighting at Oz Park, correct? And that came in on the 10th and was the 7th, and that went to whom? Went to a clearinghouse. Of the reports that we had, that one was the first one was Pilsen neighborhood, and the next one was a gentleman seen an owl. The next one was Humboldt Park, okay? Humboldt Park. And that gentleman seen a large owl too. The third one was on the boat, April the 15th. That came in on the 20th. And the 20th it came in, and now they're saying it's the 15th. The one from, and by the way, Tobias, you have the date wrong. It's the 15th for the boat, the 16th at 2 o'clock in the morning for the Pilsen district, and then 10 something in the evening for Humboldt Park, okay? And that information is correct. Now, what we learned, we learned that the IP addresses from the first and the last of those first 3 came from the same location. An IP address is a location. It's assigned to a device, be a router, whatever. And it's not some random absurdity. It's random if you're going on the internet and you're out with a device that doesn't connect to it. So that is just too odd. That is something that is too peculiar right off the bat. But I didn't even want that information. I told them, they stated that that information was there. I says, I didn't want it. I needed a second layer of evaluation to see what is wrong. So what I did was look at commonalities, and I think that's very important.
Well, I think what you're talking about here, Sam, is important to discuss is that, number one, you're seeing a pattern emerge. And if you look at psychologically, sometimes the pattern is almost like you can see a pattern of fictional things coming in. And number two, you're seeing a pattern of the same IP address, which means it's the same computer or the same house that's sending in the report. So if 2 different people, I mean, they could be brother and sister.
2 out of 3. 2 out of the first 3. Now, out of the next 4, 3 out of the next 4. Well, holy moly. You can't even hit the lottery like that. I mean, right. The
so
numbers.
That basically means
it's absurd.
It's the same house, and the person doesn't understand that you need to, if you're going to perform a hoax, what you need to do is you need to get on a VPN or you need to spoof different IP addresses when you're going to send it in. Otherwise, it's going to come from the same house. So in your home, if you're using the Wi-Fi, each laptop, each computer, your Apple TV or your Roku, your phone, everything attached to that Wi-Fi is going to come from the same IP address.
Correct.
Because the IP address is the outward-facing address to the world.
Yep.
So your router has the address, and then it subnets,
Sure.
different IPs there, so it can put stuff to your phone, to your computer, to your TV, blah blah blah. But the thing is, same IP address means the same physical location, means the same Wi-Fi network.
Correct.
And that's the first thing. So that when we talk about how research is important, that's the first level. Okay. So
You have to go through that first level, like a back room. That's how, when you're doing cyber research, now we have to think differently. In days before and sit in front of a witness, there is no witness. What we have is a submitter. We don't have a witness. We have a submitter.
but we do have witnesses in certain
Only
areas.
we only have witnesses when you have an actual human being. A witness has to be a human being, and they have to be accountable for an event or some form of information. Now, if they're making it up, it's a delusion. That doesn't count. Do you see what I'm
So
saying?
that's why we're going to go to Tobias, who has done, you've interviewed a couple of people who can actually witness
Yes.
this, right? And so Tobias, you've talked to some
an
people.
entirely different scenario.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I want to hear about that and go into because when somebody gets, I can just send something in and say, I saw Bigfoot on Lake Mendota. And I did see
Right.
Bigfoot on actually, there is a sighting of Bigfoot on Lake Mendota. And it was just by two stone college kids who were like, dude, we saw Bigfoot on Lake Mendota. I went there. I don't know how I went to the exact site they reported it. We made a little video of it. I don't know how they could have done it. But the thing is, it's anonymous. It just comes from an IP address. It can be anything. So that's what I want to get into. We were doing a better job of research. So Tobias, let's give an example of how you did research when somebody saw something unusual in beautiful, scenic Rockford, Illinois.
Oh, sure. Well, this was a particularly entertaining event to me. Now, I had been contacted by a young man who did agree to let me use his first name. If you'll bear with me, I'll go to my
John
notes here.
Smith contacted
Yeah, right.
me.
It was let's see here. I believe his first name was Dalton, and what he had said was,
I already don't believe his name.
Okay, yep, here we go. So yeah, so
What's he,
Dalton.
What's he, a
now,
superhero? Dalton.
Well, I think Dalton wasn't that Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse?
Oh,
Yeah.
Roadhouse.
Yeah, Roadhouse. Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, so Dalton had contacted me about his experience, which actually had taken place outside of Rockford. Now, I didn't include the specific location data in the article that I had written. I didn't find it particularly relevant to his story. I was able to confirm all of it, all of the places that he said that he had used geographically for context all exist exactly where he said they do. And so, he was actually several miles outside of Rockford, according to his story, between Belvedere and New Milford. And there's a road out there called Blood's Point Road. And this is surrounded, this is sort of, there's a forest preserve, actually several forest preserves at one end of this road. And then, the rest is sort of farmland.
No, Tobias, rewind really quick and tell us how you got this particular. Did the person contact you? Did the person contact Singular Fortean and say,
yeah, actually,
I saw something?
If memory serves, I'm pretty active in outreach in general, and I get a lot of people talking to me that way. And I believe specifically this is somebody I met through the Humanoid Encounters subreddit on Reddit.
Okay.
And if I just see a report on Reddit, come on, it's Reddit. That's nothing. But I did have the opportunity, obviously, to interview him over the phone. So that gave it a little more credence. But yeah, this was through social media outreach. That's how I met this
so you
kid.
called Patrick Swayze from Roadhouse, and then you interviewed him, and what did he describe? The thing is, so what did he describe in the elevator pitch? What he described?
Sure. So basically, he's out cruising with his buddy Nick. It's a smaller farming community. This is what kids do. I kind of grew up in one myself, so I get it. They're out cruising in his '97 Firebird, and it's harvest time. Sort of late summer, and as they're cruising around, they notice the cornfield to their right. The corn is swaying like something's moving through it, right? So he slows down, thinking that, a deer or something is about to jump out in front of him, which, is constant concern when you're driving around in the country in Wisconsin or Illinois. And, so he slows down to a crawl. And he said that what had then happened was this thing, this roughly anthropomorphic, being with large wings, which was completely pitch black, by the way. I asked him specifically. He didn't say any glowing red eyes, none of that. He said it appeared, almost like it was covered in tar. It was so dark. And, he described how this thing sort of zigzagged in front of him a few times and then shot straight up into the air. That's the encounter as he described it. Now, he said the whole thing lasted 15 to 20 seconds. Witnesses, they love to exaggerate. Well, I shouldn't say exaggerate. That makes it sound, contrived. I think that they have a tendency to overestimate the amount of time that an actual experience, takes. When they say 15 to 20 seconds, the whole thing was probably done in under 5. So all we can say for certain, if you believe the witness's testimony, and I don't have any reason not to, is that something big with wings, flew out, sort of jumped out of the cornfield, flew in front of him real quick, and then shot off. And it was very telling to me, actually, that this particular experience, as so many of them do, when all the sighting involves is a large winged being that isn't seen very well, took place near a whole bunch of forest preserves. Well, who loves forest preserves? Large birds. There's been so many sightings so far where all people see is, a large winged, being. And, when I see, a large winged being in the sky and it's between, May and August, I think crane. I don't hear hoofbeats and think unicorn necessarily. I tend to go with horse. So, you can take it for what it is. And in speaking to him specifically, he did, emphasize, as witnesses often do, that, he didn't think it was a bird. He was sure in his mind's eye this thing looked more humanoid than that, and it just sort of is what it is at that point. You can believe the witness and think that he's describing it sort of exactly as it occurred, or you can try to apply a little more rationality and say, well, hey, what, maybe it was a winged monster. I don't know that it wasn't, but could have been a huge bird.
Sure.
So, but that was the case that I really got to get most in depth with.
So you called him, you interviewed him, and then you checked the locations of the places. Did you check out his sweet ride? Did he send you a picture of his Firebird? Or
I wish, dude. It was a '97 Firebird T-top. Yeah, that would have been great. Yes.
And you see, that kind of thing adds credibility to me, and I'll tell you why. Because the kind of nerd who would make up a hoax like this would not be driving a '97 Firebird T-top. He'd be driving a Chevy Cavalier '94.
Yeah. But,
it's important thing, the guy's okay, you can name Dalton. He's a Redditor. You can find his information. He has an online persona. He has a persona that you can find. You've got his phone number, Tobias, so you can call him for a ride in his T-Bird whenever you like. Now, we were joking before, Sam was jokingly calling you a weirdo, Madeline, before. And we always joke about being weirdos and stuff like that. But
I do it all the time. But
Madeline, when I think about this, so you come out and say you have a podcast. It's like coming out of the closet and being yes, I'm really into this stuff. Do you think there's a certain kind of danger, not necessarily a danger, but when you put yourself publicly that you're into this kind of thing?
That's absolutely true, though. I can vouch for it.
When you don't have an anonymity to hide behind, that it changes the stuff you're willing to admit?
No, I don't think so. I think that all my family members, they were praying for me before, and they're still praying for me now. So no, I've always had transparency and liked talking about these strange things, ever since I was a little kid. So I guess that's the short answer.
But what I was thinking here, though, so as someone else who investigates this kind of thing, if you get a report or somebody says they saw something weird and comes to you about it, how do you go about your investigation or your discussion in the way you get the stuff for your podcast, what are the next steps that you take to get to the heart of the matter?
Well, I think it's important to not immediately just discredit. If they just have a story, I think that sharing stories are great. I think that there are always going to be cases where people have this encounter and there might not be hard evidence that they're able to present. They might not have photograph or footprints that they found, but that doesn't mean that the story shouldn't be shared. I still think that storytelling is just an innate thing that humans should continue to do, because more people might have similar stories and might be able to back that up if there was more than one witness. But obviously, evidence is the best thing that you can have. When people report things to me, I will look for inconsistencies. As we've talked about with the Mothman sightings, look for inconsistencies. I look for inconsistencies in the weather, in the moon phases, just the little details that they gave, because your memory can fault you. It's well known that you can believe something to be completely true, but in fact, that's just a memory that you made up yourself. So it's important to kind of fact check, and see if the things that people are reporting do line up, to see if their story is even credible to continue to pass on in hopes that other people have similar stories.
Okay, so I think that's a great way to segue into our next question for Sam. Now, Sam, as the guy that gets the reports, the MUFON reports, first of all, I would just love to. I'd love to get those reports too, just to see the kind of stuff that gets sent in every day. But maybe I just be so jaded by the end of it that I wouldn't enjoy it. But I still would like to see some of the crazy ones. Maybe I would have an assistant handle the boring ones, and I'd be like, just send me the ones with nudity. Okay, so Sam, any of the reports that came into the Illinois MUFON of the winged humanoids that you think have some credence, that you personally checked out, and can you give us a little bit of the process of checking that out? And do you think any of them have some kind of credence?
Well, here they are. And of course, none of them, except, I shouldn't say that, all but one of them, this is for 2017, there were 7 reports that came in, and all but one had no contact information or fictitious contact information, fictitious, I'm having a hell of a time with words today, fictitious addresses, fictitious emails, or in one instance, return, but which could be fictitious. And only one person gave contact information that really we were able to contact. The phone number was from Texas. The IP address for the email, or the email, was Kansas. Welcome to Oz. And the name is an IT expert who's a scientist and some big shot. So, and never returned the texts, never returned the phone calls, never returned the emails. And what do you take from that? Now, at some point, when you have volumes, you had 7 reports. You have, of the first 3, 2 IP addresses, no contact information or fictitious contact information, conflicting data, on and on and on. How is it? And we still kept going. This is not the procedure. We still kept looking to see if there's any merit to any of this. And this is the problem I have. When we end up with nothing, how is it somebody else feels they have something? Now, stories, on the other hand, you're talking to somebody, these are genuine. Tobias talked to somebody. It was a living human being. That's a genuine story. Now, if that narrative is factual or fictitious, we still don't know. That's the other problem. The problem we have here is we have to base everything on an after-the-fact scenario. And therefore, the witness and everything they say in their veracity on not just what they say, it's how they convey that information, how their ability to analyze what they see and put it into some sort of rational terminology that our Ken could also relate to, not just theirs. You talk to somebody in Guatemala about the flaming canoes that fly through the sky, and they're UFOs. but they call them canoes. Okay, everything's a little bit different, and so you have to try to. And this is the importance again of storytelling. I'm 100% in back of that. The storytelling and culture and all this stuff comes into play, and you have to sort it out. The human psyche is very this whole. People will not realize the significance of this whole flap. From a social psychology point of view, it's beautiful. This is a significant situation as far as what's going on here and what it says about the cyber world we live in today, how we communicate differently, and how we convey our stories and information. And I think it's really important. I'm not dissing. I'm enjoying this, actually. But as far as a valid anything, no, squat.
I think that's a really good point, Sam. So you've the stuff you guys got in a MUFON, you've gotten 7 reports in from this year.
Only
and
one.
When you tried to contact the people, they didn't even get back to you.
Well, it appears to be real, but they never contact. The rest of them was all fictitious addresses, or phone numbers like 1234. And I have everything here. You could have a copy of it. You just can't have their name. Yeah.
Wait, my phone number is 555-1234. That's for everybody out there. If you guys want to give me a call, it's 555-1234. Now, Allison, going off that, we were talking about, Sam just said the importance of stories. Tobias talked to the guy with the sweet T-bird. Madeline told us about how, she engages finding inconsistencies, moving it. Now, has anybody contacted you now that you've had your face up in so many Mothman, videos? Have people contacted you and said, holy crap, I saw a winged humanoid?
Yes, I have 2 contacts, and one actually, I should say 3, because when I was on Midnight in the Desert, someone called in. But I have 2 people that I have the definite contact information for that I need to get back to. That one just actually they both came in this week. And
what the hell you been doing?
but yeah, in the last couple of days,
I was going to say, like, why do we have
a little bit of prominence with a Mysterious Universe interview article of me? So now a couple of people started to notice, and so I'm going to get back to them and see if I can interview them.
How did they come in? Was it like a YouTube comment, or was it? How did they come in?
I got an email from my website, MilwaukeeGhost.com, and this is a person who said he saw a dark figure, but it's unclear if it's the Mothman. And he also he gave me his address, and his phone number and his name. So that'll be interesting to track that down. But, I'm not sure if it's
Now, is his name another character
from Roadhouse?
From a Patrick Swayze film? So, no, the idea is that what they're doing is they're putting Patrick Swayze character names in each of these reports, and they're leading us on breadcrumbs, like little breadcrumbs, until we find.
I'm not as much of a pop culture aficionado, an expert as you are, Mike. So I'm gonna forward it to you, and then we'll use your expertise.
You know. But he did sign it. Nobody puts baby in the corner, and I don't know why.
That's right. I thought he was talking about me. Anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna get back. The other one came through Facebook Messenger. Someone friended me,
and that's a good thing right there, because number one, and I was going to say even the first person, like, okay, you give an address and stuff. Okay, let's go to their Facebook. Facebook is it's the stalker's best friend, number one. Foursquare is the real, and Swarm are the real stalker's best friend, because you can see where they are right now.
Mike, you're creeping me out.
But how else do I get dates? No, but the thing is that you get the information. Okay, so you have an email address. And is the email address, is it a work email address? Is it, it's not like bonertime@gmail or whatever. Like, there's some real email address associated with it. And then there's a phone number. Yeah. Phone numbers have to belong to human beings. And that's the trick. So when people are...
I don't think Mothman has a phone.
No, Mothman don't do cold. Mothman don't do phone.
That's right. Okay, let's get it straight.
But the whole point is that you can talk to these people and then and they're willing to stake. And that's the thing.
Right.
Dalton was willing to stake and willing to say is part of his online persona. You can track his Reddits. You can eventually find out who the guy is.
Right. And that's I'll be getting back to you. If these things check out, then I can go forward. Now, let me just break from the format a little bit, because Tobias, speaking of things, and when they don't check out, what do you do? Related to what we were talking about, one of the Auburn Grisham sightings, it's number 21 on the map right now. And I know Lon has taken four of the accounts off the map. One was number 17. That was like flying above the United Center. That was the one with the least amount of information. So that was great that one was removed, because it really, when I went to the video, I hardly had anything to talk about, just did a drive-by. But, there were a few others removed, and we don't know why. But why hasn't, if everyone knows, as you said previously, that there is no police report. So this witness stated that he's a police officer. We have to take that on faith, and that he filed a report, but like nobody can find it. And everybody who's tried, it's coming up as there is no such report. Why is that still on there? If the witness has not shown the credibility that's necessary, why is that still on the map? Why wasn't that removed with the other four?
Well, honestly, you make a good point, and I will tell you from my own perspective, this is a case that I personally have disregarded as likely false. I can't speak, I can't speak for Lon, obviously. So I don't know why he hasn't removed it from the map. Personally, I have it on our timeline still, mostly because in trying to give an honest representation of what this flap is and what it consists of, even if this is a false report, it has become part of the narrative, and I think people need to understand that. People need to understand. For instance, Charles Fort himself. That man loved a hoax as much as he loved, real unexplainable phenomena. And there's a reason for that. And I think that Sam touched on it, and he did a pretty good job doing so. In saying that there is a psychosocial aspect to this that is it's fascinating. And it deserves to be part of the record here, I think, overall.
Oh, and I don't disagree with that, but I think if you're going to have a Mothman sightings map, instead of removing cases, maybe do some due diligence in your research, and then add an addendum to the report, saying that you don't know if this one is credible. You can still have it as part of the timeline, of course. And, I don't think it should be removed. But, how are people supposed to tell fact from fiction?
No, yeah, again, that's a good point. Personally, what I'll do is I'll go back to articles, and, I will update them with new information as it comes out. And I think that helps our readers, do exactly what you're talking about, which is, discern between cases that have real merit and sightings that have absolutely no verification whatsoever. So, again, that's what I personally do. I can't speak for anything happening with the Mothman map, but yeah, as far as our timeline is concerned, I like to go back and update articles with new information as it becomes available. And like I said, sort of point our readers in the right direction as far as telling truth from fiction, at least as well as we know it.
Well, I think you're making a good point here, Tobias, and I know that you personally have a very principled approach in how because you want these things to be real, and these things aren't. But the more people lie, and the more people make up narratives, or the more people that are hoaxing just for fun, everybody from the same computer address, like, hey, it's Friday night, I'm going to send out some Mothman reports. The more people do stuff like that, it breaks our heart that there isn't actually a winged humanoid over Chicago. I'm dying here but we don't have proof of it. But I think the thing is also, what kind of poisons the soup? That's not even a thing. Nobody poisons. I guess people do poison soup. Chloe poisons
We'll
soup.
make it a thing, Mike.
Right. It was like when I learned that Chloe from the Myrtle's plantation, that ghost that just appeared in that photograph, wasn't even real. It broke my heart. Like, she wasn't even a real person. That when people are trying to sell a narrative, that means they're trying to make money on it. That poisons the soup. When there's a book out and it's like, well, it's like the Amityville hoax. Like, they're going to keep talking that the Amityville horror is real 40 years later because they're still trying to get residuals on a book. And I think that we want people to look at, like you said, you want to tell the truth because you want eventually the truth to be winged humanoids. We want the truth. We'd love it to be. You want to believe, but you can't if there's too much. If there's money to be made from a narrative being sold, it just starts to get dangerous. And you start to bend the truth because you're like, well, I'd like this story to be true. And I'm kind of going to ignore certain facts on it because people are buying a book or people are seeing my movie. And I think we see that all the time in the paranormal field. And that's the thing we're trying to avoid. I think about people we've had on the podcast. If you think that I haven't talked to some people who I think are not completely bonkers, that you're just like, oh my God, how'd I get myself into this conversation, and do I have time to find another topic before the deadline? But that's it. But you do your best to let them speak to tail, and that's all. So, I think as we wind down here, how do we qualify what is evidence in the paranormal field? And I think this is something that everybody can address because everybody has a different standard. When Lon was on the show and he talked about remote viewers, that he had a team of remote viewers looking into this, that's something to me does not qualify as evidence because I watched The Men Who Stare at Goats, and I know what the science showed on remote. Plus, I've listened to that. Who's the guy that is on Coast to Coast, and he's the most boring.
Oh, come on!
Is that Ed
Dames?
or whatever?
Ed Dames.
Ed Dames. I mean, he might have some cool stories, but man, he takes a while to get to them. And so let's go around the table and to everybody. What would qualify to you as a piece of paranormal evidence, even if it's just something that you can't explain, but it's like, Sherlock Holmes said, in the absence of, and I know I'm paraphrasing this horribly, in the absence of, when you go through all the possibilities and all that's left is the impossible, well, there you go. What qualifies as evidence to you, Tobias? And then we'll go to Madeline and Sam.
My personal philosophy when dealing with an eyewitness is to operate under the assumption as though everything they're saying is true until I have hard evidence to the contrary. So I think we can all agree that there are levels of verification of details to any story that need to be done, in order to attribute any sort of truth value to it. Sort of beyond that, obviously, anytime there's any kind of physical evidence, I love a good, visual radar confirmation UFO case. Like you have some military pilots in the air, somebody's tracking the object also on radar from the ground. It's hard to argue with stuff like that. There's a certain scientific, level that needs to be maintained, in order to sort of have something that is inarguable. Beyond that, just for something to be interesting, as far as evidence is concerned, I need an eyewitness that I think is honest. Honestly, like really, that's enough for it to be interesting. Obviously, to be proven, you need a whole heck of a lot more than that. So,
okay. Madeline, what's your standard what do you think qualifies as paranormal evidence?
Well, I agree a lot with you said, Tobias, but the thing about evidence is, a lot of these paranormal things, are they really happening objectively, or is it something that's more so happening to the experiencer? And so I agree. I think that, the first step is really having a credible witness, somebody that you believe is being honest, somebody that hasn't been under the influence, or that has any sort of, mental health conditions or something that could, subject their credibility. With the Mothman, though, we're in Chicago. There's a million cameras everywhere. That still blows my mind. Has anybody Have any of you guys tried to get any of the surveillance cameras that are plastered around on the millions of buildings that the Mothman has supposedly flown past?
Oh, that's a good. I didn't even think about surveillance cameras. Madeline, good one.
All right, I'm done here, you guys.
I would say drop your mic, but you just like drop your.
No, I mean
headphone.
honestly, that is something that has come up quite a bit. I mean that is a very, very, very common question, actually, because it's true. It's a city under constant, surveillance. As far as that is concerned, have I personally tried? No, and I don't know any investigator, so far that has. I wouldn't even know where to start trying to get, private surveillance information from like a corporation or something that has a camera on their building. They're not going to give that to anybody. And I don't know if there are police surveillance cameras, if maybe like a FOIA request would do it, but it's not anything that I've ever heard of anyone doing successfully.
I think maybe this is a good group to try. Maybe we could all try to do that.
And this is how we can start. Now, Sam, number one, what qualifies as paranormal evidence to you? And as somebody who's probably dealt with, thousands of different reports of UFO sightings, how would you go about getting the surveillance camera?
Well, first of all, FOIAs only go for government buildings that are going to comply. When it comes to a private sector building, and sometimes the cameras and whatever are actually owned by private corporations, so you're not going to really get anywhere. You really need to get behind. You need a back door to pretty much everything. And as far as trying to get the police reports, if there was not, I wasn't even concerned about getting the reports. I was actually concerned about any talk at the Ashburn Gresham district. So my people that were the main person involved in that, trying to retrieve that information, would have easily been able to get it, because he spent 10 years in that district and still has a very good report. So that didn't even exist. There wasn't even any chatter, wasn't anything. So it was dead. And so that just didn't hold up anything. But it didn't make sense as far as for perpetuating the story. The mythos has to keep going on. So here, now, when you're doing a report, I'd like to give you a real quick example of like how we worked on certain really good cases, like the UFO, the case UAP over at O'Hare. We, first of all, work in conjunction with a bunch of people. And a bunch of...
Wait, first of all, UAP is the unidentified aerial phenomena.
That is the preferred term today by, a lot of people use it. And in aviation, we had the National Aviation Reporting Center for Anomalous Phenomena, which was headed up by Richard Haynes. And that report was not a MUFON report. In fact, I worked on a lot of other cases. The best cases weren't MUFON cases. They were actually from Peter Davenport's National UFO Reporting Center. He had something, and he's a guy that rarely gets any credit. The man does a great job. Anyways, the key person there, the point person, was Richard Haynes. And we had different people with different expertise and abilities working collectively, and we shared data, and that's what we do. And I share data all the time. It's a regular thing. It's not an issue. And I share witnesses. Heck, Ellison, the only witness I had from this whole ordeal was Billy, and Bill contacted both me and Lon. So he wasn't his witness,
right?
And he accused me of intimidating him. I'm about as intimidating. Only thing I can intimidate is a pizza or a wicker chair. I mean, that's about it. I get beat up by butterflies. So I mean, that's just crazy. So when Billy heard that, he was roaring. But he was the only person who, you were saying, a credible witness out of the MUFON reports? None. That wasn't a MUFON report. He contacted me individually through an email. So he had him on the show. I talked to him too. Now, evidence, when you're talking here, we're going after the fact. We want something repeatable and testable. Well, how would we do that in these instances when these are just after the fact anecdotal accounts? What you look for then is corroboration from other independent witnesses. And independent is very important because it gives a separate perspective. Let's say you're seeing the same event, and this is the privilege and the benefit of a mass sighting, Tinley Park, where we had tons of evidence because we have video data. We have tons of that. There was physical effect to radars and other things. And this wasn't just localized in one area. It was around the world in multiple countries over a period of time. And so we had people saying the same thing, same time. We had footage that we were able to get a three-dimensional analysis on, and we had multiple groups of people evaluating it. And when I worked as a consultant, as you know, I'm a consultant for Hollywood, and when they're hiring me on different things, but UFO hunters, when I was a consultant on there, we had their group evaluate the footage, which was fantastic. I mean, we had all this stuff put together. And so the thing is, you have to have something testable in the first place. But the other thing is, at the very least, a corroborating witness. And that means somebody you could talk to face, who could stand witness to their testimony. Yes, I saw this. Now, it doesn't mean they didn't see it incorrectly, as Tobias was saying. Cranes. Oh my God! I saw a crane going up to the conference up there in Milwaukee. I saw a sandhill crane, which I really like, by the way. And you get the right angle on them. That's a pterodactyl. I don't care what anybody says. They're huge. And I had somebody tell me before.
I saw one eat a baby.
I mean, these things are just huge. So I hear this stuff all the time that, it can't be this, it can't be that. It's amazing. But it doesn't mean the person's lying. And it is a genuine report. We first have to have a genuine report. That involves a real person, eye to eye, telling their story, their event. And that's what we don't get in the cyber flap scenario. Or, this is the other problem, that it's only being contained by a few people that control that data. That isn't the case. If there's a case you need to look into here in Illinois, and I have access to that information, if that witness will allow you to talk to them, I'll be doggone if I won't stand in the way. You can talk to them. I give a damn. I want the information out. Maybe you'll get something out of this person that I can't. And that's something we
Through
do.
torture.
And you would torture them. You and that zucchini, smacking them in the head. I know it. Yeah.
That's right. No, I use the phone book. You put the phone, right, because, it doesn't bruise. No, the thing is, though, is that we all have levels of evidence. And this is what we're looking for in 2018. When we approach a phenomenon, when we approach something that we don't understand and that we're trying to understand, finding those layers that give it believability to ourselves and how we present that, because we are the disseminators of information as podcast creators, as bloggers, as the guy that goes and investigates the different things through MUFON and is one of the places that collects the information. We're the ones disseminating it to the rest of the weirdos like us. And we want to present it in the way that we're like, hey man, I believe this. You should believe it too. And if we can't get to that level of presentable evidence ourselves, then what are we just trying to sell something here? Or are we just trying to get attention here? I found this over and over again when heroes get destroyed. When Don Schmidt in the Roswell slides comes out, it's like, these Roswell slides are ace. And I like Don. I think he's a great guy. And he broke my heart, Fredo. Fredo, you broke my heart. But I mean, that's the thing. And you see that and you're like, this is obviously all BS. So in 2018, what are you guys hoping for in paranormal research? Or what can we end in it as a positive New Year thing? It doesn't have to, actually, it can be negative too. But what do you guys hope for in your 2018 when it comes to paranormal research? Allison, let's start with you, and then Tobias, Madeline, and Sam.
Well, I just want a mystery that becomes more compelling as you look closer. The closer you get, the weirder it gets. Because I know that there are things out there that are unexplainable. And if we waste our time dealing with hoaxers and, not doing the basics of research and, get distracted by, people who are telling us untruths and, treat that the same as something that has multiple witnesses, or something that has people that will come forward and tell their story publicly. I mean, you're really muddying the water, and you're distracting us from cases that are really compelling. I want to go forward in 2018 and have paranormal investigators like me research real mysteries and leave hoaxers behind. That's what I'd like to see.
All right, I like that. Tobias, what do you see in 2018 for the Singular 40, and what's your dream, baby?
Well, yeah, honestly, I would love to see a change in culture, frankly. I'd like to see the Fortean field moving in what I think is the right direction. I'd like to see people, putting ego aside, valuing truth over celebrity, frankly. I'd like to see, just in a larger cultural context, I'd like to see some of the stigma removed. Like if you talk to me just normally, if we're talking about the Bears or something, you don't know what a weirdo I am.
I do, if you like the Bears.
Nobody would. Yeah. That aside, we're most experiencers that I have met are just normal people who have experienced the impossible, and they don't know how to talk about it. They're afraid to talk about it. And it's the reason that there's so much obfuscation surrounding these events. And it has to end. So if I could have one thing, that would be it.
Okay, thanks, Tobias. Madeline, New Year's dreams for you and measuring this. First of all, what does measuring the circle mean?
Measuring the circle is a Charles Fort quote that basically no matter where you start on a circle, you can measure the entire thing, which is very related to paranormal research. No matter where you start, whether it's with Mothman, ghosts, Bigfoot, the placebo effect, there's a million different things that all touch the circle, and they're all really connected. So that's what my podcast is all about, is, talking about all different types of strange things, not just ghost stories or UFOs or anything in particular. And my resolution for 2018 would be to end clickbait articles. I think that we live in a time where everybody just reads the headline and shares it, and things spread so rapidly. And as researchers, I think that we really need to slow down and fully vet and research subjects and phenomenon before we share it with our audience. To make sure that it's, truthful. And like, you guys have said, it's really important that we're after the truth of these phenomenon, and not for some personal gain or personal agenda. As selfless and unbiased as we can possibly be in the reports, the weird stuff that's out there is weird enough. We don't need to be creating new things or trying to fluff the details, because there's some weird stuff going on out there. So that would be my 2018 hope for paranormal researchers. If you really, call yourself a researcher, if you're really interested in these things, to read the articles thoroughly that you're sharing, and make sure, that they're coming from credible sources.
And I'll tell you why. It connects back to something we talked about earlier this year, and we talked about Amelia Earhart for a long time. Longer than I ever thought I'd talk about Amelia Earhart. But the thing is that as soon as the thing came out, Amelia Earhart was on this island, then everybody jumps on it. Look, Amelia Earhart's on this island. Then somebody comes out and says Amelia Earhart was not on this island. This whole thing's made up. Then they come out immediately. It's a race to the clicks. It's a race for the eyeballs, and that's not a race for the truth.
Well, and something else that I'd like to say, to go along with that is, like with the Mothman sightings, there has been so much talk about it. There's been so many people now that know about it. The idea of tulpas is very real. And if we have enough people that are just going on and they believe that there's this Mothman, even though there may be or there may not be, we're still not entirely sure. But if enough people are believing in a phenomenon, it's been observed and proven that you can actually manifest something through the power of belief. So I'm a little worried, with these many people knowing about the Mothman, maybe, it could be creating some of the sightings that people are witnessing.
Well, what I'm thinking is that if we put the idea of the Hawkman from Flash Gordon in everybody's head, then it's going to be Brian Blessed coming down and going, ha ha ha, Gordon. Anyway, that's what we can all hope for. Now, Sam, what are you hoping for in 2018 for your resolution?
Oh boy, forget it. I don't know. It's just too crazy. I think we've come to this point where you said culture, and I think of nomenclature. Are we have mon culture going on where people want to be subdivided and put into subsections instead of just realizing, hey, this crosses over. The Fortean concept is so huge, and I was reintroduced to it this year thanks to this whole scenario with the Mothman and speaking out in Maryland. And just something that I found a really good presentation by Jerome Clark, who I have a lot of regards for. I think he's a great writer. He's a strong critic, but he's really trying to make this field credible and the field in a larger sense. And the thing is, because something's inexplicable doesn't mean that it didn't happen or it has no value from a cultural sense and potentially a scientific value. And this is where we do have to approach this. And the thing is to be far far nicer to each other. I mean, bottom line is we're just freaking human,
Aww.
Right? And I mean, what the heck?
I think those are all wonderful resolutions, and I all hope that comes to. I hope Paranormal Santa, even though he's probably a tulpa, I hope Paranormal Santa brings you guys exactly what you wanted in your paranormal research. As for me, I kind of just want to, like world peace. Children, hugging each other and stuff like that, and like $10 million I could use in 2018. So once again, everybody, tell us your websites and where people can find more about you. Allison, where can they find you?
MilwaukeeGhost.com. And if you'd like to see my work on the Chicago Mothman controversy, you can go to youtube.com/Mothman.
Tobias, where can we find more you?
Well, I am with the Singular Fortean Society, and you can find us at singularfortean.com.
Madeline, where can we find more about Measuring the Circle?
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. Measuring the Circle, you can find on YouTube. You can just search Measuring the Circle. We also have a website, measuringthecircle.wordpress.com, because I'm too cheap to buy a domain.
Fair enough. And Sam, where can we find your website? And you're probably going to have a bunch of stuff on your site refuting the claims made about you in the Mothman dynasty. Where can we be able to find that information?
Well, we actually have a new domain for that, and it isn't up yet. It'll be the Chi-Town Flap is what it is .com. I have that. And I just want to talk, and it's not going to be dissing people, just laying out the information that we stumbled across, and hopefully people can share other information. But my, if someone wants to contact me, it's MUFONSam1 at Gmail, MUFONSam1 at Gmail. And of course, Illinois MUFON is mymufon.com. And boy, I got to update the site. It's prehistoric right now. But, you contact me.
It's on GeoCities, isn't it?
Hell, it's at it somewhere. Yeah,
All right. Hey, thank you very much, guys, for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. It is the last day of 2017, and you guys made it a great last day of 2017 for me. So thanks
pleasure.
for joining us.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's.
Thank you, guys.
And Happy New Year's.
Happy New Year.
All right. I think the book is closing quickly on this one. I mean, I'd be happy if maybe we'll see something this weekend and we can reopen the case. Yeah. Wouldn't that be funny if we actually did see Mothman when we were in Chicago?
I'd love to have it explode. I'd love to have the Mothman be real and stuff. I'd love to have these sightings be real. But, just going over the evidence, we feel like there's a lot of internet hoaxes, and there's a few people willing to associate their names with it, but not enough. So in 2018, we're hoping for bona fide cases of the real Mothman.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to start it with it this weekend.
If you've got something, send it our way, because we'd love to see evidence.
Yes. And make sure to check out the sites of everybody in the show notes, because the people that were with us today have done a lot of research. gone to the locations, spent a lot of time thinking about this, working on it. Anyway, a lot of fun. So thank you everybody for joining us. But now let's get to some music.
Yeah.
The song for this week's inspired by not only our conversation about the Mothman and what we think should be the standards for research as part of it, but also the chorus is inspired by Carl Sagan's book, Demon Haunted World. Science as a Candle in the Dark. So kind of the chorus takes a little bit is Saganish, is influenced by Carl Sagan, and the rest of it is me giving it my go for a little bit of Eminem action here.
All right. Well, let's not leave him waiting any longer, Mike.
All right. So here is House of Cards.
But you're just a quack talking, a lot of smack setting the whole field back. A lot of tall tales coming, piling up to nothing, looking for the clicks and acting like a dick. It's a curiosity, all this privacy, anonymity. Who can you believe? You can tell me all day about the trash you heard. Doesn't matter how absurd, unless you stand by your word. All this animosity comes down to money. Humans ripping all the data just to fit your theory. You wanna sell books or you want some truth? It sure looks to me you ain't much of a sleuth. Extraordinary claims, extraordinary proof. When your dude's in a roof, kinda sounds like a goof. We need a real witness, not all anonymous. About some testimony, don't sound like baloney. Guilt needs to be there, you know they're gonna nitpick. Eaten by the cynics, defeated by the skeptics. T's need to be crossed, you can't just gloss over all the small stuff of things are gonna get rough. Gotta share the data, info wants to be free. Transparency, no secrecy. It takes all kinds of different minds. If we want it to be better, we gotta work together.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
And a very happy new year to all of our Patreon supporters.
They're the best.
Special shout out to our friend Ned.
Dr. Ned, Happy New Year, man.
Thank you so much for pledging our community and joining it, and for being a darn fun bunch of people, wouldn't you say?
That's right. I really enjoy the Patreon hangouts we do every month, where we talk about paranormal movies, the cool stories we saw each week. Last time I showed everybody my pictures from the ghost hunt inside the museum.
That was cool.
The Metropolitan Museum in New York City, and that was fun.
Yeah.
And we were just going over our paranormal stuff and hanging out on a Wednesday night and drinking wine and beers and having fun. And so we would like to do that with you guys.
Yeah.
So Patreon community is a great place where you can talk to like-minded people, hang out with us, and also you're supporting paranormal research, jokes, songs, videos, all this kind of stuff, and the fun things that we do on See You on the Other Side. And Wendy, where can the fine people do that?
They can do that at othersidepodcast.com/donate.
Oh, Roadhouse.